Well, I reckon we have a go, Rod, where it's time to get started with some cool stuff. How are you doing?
I am awesome.
I'm very excited to be back, and this is pretty much the Rod show where he tells me what to do, and I just do it, and we teach you cool things. So I think that's the way we kind of plan this, isn't it, Rod?
Just about, I think.
I
Um,
think.
so we'll go from there. So last time we created a basic Power App, right?
We did.
So this time I think we're going to go a little bit more into the PowerApps interface, right? Into the App Studio, and we'll take a little bit of a walk through the navigation there and what everything does. And then after that, I think what we're going to do is we'll do some more customization on the app that we've got.
That'll be good.
Next week, I think we'll start one from scratch rather than what we're doing at the moment. But
I agree, and that's something I'd like to look at, because that's not something that I really deal with. And then remember, if all goes well, we still have a little time slot for a guest to visit as well. So let's hope that can come through as well. But definitely next week, I'm quite excited to go and look at building something from scratch. I just want to open up the Q&A as well and make sure if there's anything happening there.
I do have it open. If something comes through, I will say it will pop through.
That's perfect. So, of course, I just went to PowerApps, and there's my app that I built last time, right? So I could just click on this drop down and go and edit that app again to go straight into the app, right?
Absolutely. That's the way to do it.
So let's get this cracking, and let's go have some fun with some PowerApps. And please remember, for those watching this as well, I don't know why it's doing that, is that we do record these sessions. It is available on both mine as well as Rod's YouTube channels. So if you're kind of like busy with other things, you can always go watch it afterwards, and we do share it afterwards. So I think that's the main focus of this, is to have an ability to have some time to actually do some recordings and then to be able to share it afterwards. So that's something important for me. I see that I messed this up last time with a very ugly icon. But there we go. There's our form, Rod. So do you want to drive this? Do you want to tell me where to go? What do you want me to do?
Sure. Yeah, I think this time let's just start looking around the screen and what we're doing and the different bits and pieces we're talking about. Let's start on the far left-hand side of the screen.
Yeah.
You got a little hamburger menu. So unlike the sort of further down, the second little hamburger. Yeah. So if you click that and pop it out, it'll tell you the different sections we have there. I think let's start there. The first one, and the one you're going to be using 90% of the time, right, is the tree view. If it ever does take you off of that, that's how you get back to it, is that little 3 stacks.
Got it.
So that's going to give us our list of different controls and everything, which is the best way to select whatever our controls are, right?
And that was something that was good for me last time, right, is that I tend to mess around on the form and I try and select the specific control, and I do mess up quite a lot when I do that. And I have to admit that it's much better to navigate from this side and make sure that you are looking at the right control when you make changes. So that was a big win from our last session.
Yeah, so that's particularly useful in a couple scenarios. So often you're going to be doing things on the page where you have different layers, and what order they're in matters, right? You might have some things overlaying other things.
Okay.
Right? So you might have a background image or something, or you might have a pop-up that pops up with a notification or something, and then selecting different pieces can get quite difficult because some things are layered behind other ones.
Got it.
So it's quite nice to do that. The other bit where that's quite useful is when we have a gallery, like on that screen there, we've got a gallery, right? If you want to select one of the pieces of that, the label or the icon or the whatever, you'll notice if you're clicking on it in the canvas, only the first item in the gallery will actually select the controls for you.
Okay.
Which can be quite confusing, especially if you've already got a bunch of data in your app and you're scrolling up and down and like, why can't I click this, right? Why can't I select this text? It's because only the first item is going to do that. So getting into the habit of selecting from the tree view is really quite handy.
Absolutely.
Cool. So that's our tree view, and you can collapse and expand the various things there.
So a question on the preview, just something I was wondering about, because this is structured very similar to how InfoPath worked for me, and how you've got your different stagings for views that you can see, I mean, your edit and your detail, etc. This order as well obviously defines the first order that it opens, right? Or is that not really defined by the order that it lies here?
Yeah. So the first one in line there is going to be what starts the app.
Got it.
There is right above that, there is the little app line there. Yeah. That does have a property called onStart. So you could put in a function to navigate it to a different screen rather than the first one you have in the list.
You could have a nice company logo with some text on there and something, and then you've got to set that specific screen to the onStart.
Yeah, you could do that. Like I would say just have your first screen at the top. Right.
Got it.
If you have multiple screens, if you hit the little 3-dot menu next to one of the screens, it does have the options to move up or move down.
Oh, I see.
Not the app one, on one of the screens there. Yeah.
Okay.
You can move up and move down. Same thing with the various controls in the screens. You can also reorder those.
Easily duplicate screens as well. So sometimes if you want something that's similar, then you can just duplicate.
Yeah, and that can be very handy. You can also copy paste between different screens. You can select a bunch of stuff and copy paste between them. It is a lot better now than it has been previously. There was a time where that was quite challenging and you weren't sure if it was going to come out or not when you pasted it, but now it does, and that's quite good.
It's definitely gotten better, don't make a mistake. Since when I started messing around with it, there's been a lot of improvements, so that's really cool. Yeah,
like it is we're constantly getting new stuff, and it is getting better and better, which is the great thing and the terrible thing about working in the cloud these days, right? Everything is getting better and changing all the time, which is great. The problem is everything is getting better and changing all the time. So used to, back in SharePoint, we'd get a new one every 4 years, and we were happy with that.
And then it was still shocking, eh? When that new version came out, it was absolute chaos, because there was so much change every time. You know, it was just so different.
Yeah, it was absolutely mad. So while we're in the tree view here, we've talked about moving things up and down. The other thing we can do is if we select multiple controls and then hit the menu, we can group them together. So if you select a couple things, you can say group.
And what would that do so that you can move them at the same time? When would you use that?
You can move them at the same time. It also lets you name it, right? And then you can select the whole group as one if you want to move it around or something like that.
If I had to select the label and that together, let's quickly try that out. And I group this as an, I can then rename it. So let's call it header. I don't know. Form header. Is that a bad name? I don't know.
It's perfectly fine. So a lot of the time when we're naming these sorts of things, unless your company specifically has a naming convention that you should use, it really doesn't matter. I would just say you should be consistent, at least within the app that you're doing, right?
Got it.
So that you know what you mean. If you know what you mean, that's fine. If you ever have to hand the app over to somebody else, then preferably use names that they'd also understand. But
just on that, so a quick one. So if I've grouped a couple of controls together, it also means that I can apply like functions to that to say that it hides this whole group when something is equal to something, or is that how you can use that as well?
So yes, in the group it does. They do then share. It will give you a list of the shared attributes for that group.
Okay.
So one of those is visible specifically,
Yeah.
right? Or on select is another one. So what happens when I click it?
Okay.
So where would that's quite useful.
Where do you see, is this the like shared attributes? Where would you see the shared attributes on that group then?
So I think the best way to do this is just below you've got your file menu, and then you've got a row of actions, and then below that, right, we've got those two boxes. The one on the left is, I call it the attribute drop down. Probably actually has a better name, property drop down, but whatever that is. I would get used to using that to get your different to get your different attributes for whatever controls you're using. Right.
So this is something I want to add on the branding, because I think that's important. And you were talking about naming conventions. So that's something that I tell clients when they start with this. So my training normally just includes an overview of what PowerApps is, the quick and dirty of just creating a Power App from SharePoint. So even before I start with modifications, but something that I always tell companies is that when they get started with Power Apps, and I did the same with InfoPath, I did the same with Nintex, you need to, in a company, come up with a guideline when it comes to these forms, because within a couple of months, you're going to have 50 or 100 of these apps floating around, and every single one of them are going to look absolutely different. So from a branding perspective, even if it's just a page that's built on SharePoint or a OneNote page that says, this is the logo that we use, this is where you can find it, this is the size the logo must be, this is the font, this is the background color that we use. So you can just do it with a screenshot here, or even green shot that I use to make notes on it as well, but to give guidance for everyone building apps. It just makes it easier for them as well. But then you've got guidelines, because to go back and change the branding on apps is unbelievably painful. So if you can set it up straight from the start, it just like sets down their ground rules. This is the logo, this is the background header, this is the messaging or whatever. So I think that's quite important.
Absolutely. Once we get more into building apps yourself, right, from blank, rather than this PowerApps generated one, we can talk a little bit about how you might set up a template that people can create from. And typically, if you are, as your business, if you're expecting to have quite a lot of these and quite a lot of citizen developers, it's worth putting in the time to work out what that is, right? So you can do things like have a banner, here's what our menus look like, all that sort of thing. And there is more advanced pieces in this, which I'm sure we'll get to way down the line, around components, where you can build collections of controls, and you can sort of package them together into like one thing, and then you can put that on a screen and it'll treat it like one control, right? But it can be made up of a bunch of different things, and you can use that for menus and pop-ups and that sort of stuff. So that's sort of when you're really deep into Power Apps. If your business is really expecting to use a lot of it, having a stable of those that can be reused between apps can do a lot to give that same look and feel across the thing. Yeah,
I'm excited for when we eventually get there. I'm quite excited for this journey, by the way, Rod. I think it's going to be such a great learning experience for me as well, and I'm so glad that I eventually dragged you and not kicking and screaming, but to do this with me.
I love doing this stuff. It's I appreciate the kick in the pants to get me going, right? It's always one of those.
There we go. Okay, cool. Where are we next?
So we've talked about the tree view there. We did touch on that properties bar, that attributes drop down up the top there. We'll call that attributes drop down. I would get familiar with that. A nice easy thing is when you know what you're looking for, right? So if you have a label, what's the text in it? The attribute for that is called text. And if you select everything there and you start typing, it will auto-complete it for you.
Got it.
So it's quicker than having to scroll through. which in the little things we're doing here is not that necessary, right? But if you are building a page with lots of controls, every little bit of time you can save does add up.
Got it. Okay.
On the right of that, right, there's the little equal sign and then the universal symbol for function. I say universal, but it's
There we
go. That then is our formula bar, right?
Okay.
PowerApps does use, if you want text, it'll use inverted commas typically, like full inverted commas, not a single one. So that's a little thing to pay attention to when we get there. And there are lots and lots of different functions you can use. And yeah, if you hit the drop down there, it can give you it will give you a whole bunch. And you can select what kind you want, and you can go through all of that. I mean, there's a lot, right?
Okay.
But we'll get through those as we go. Right?
Absolutely. Excited to do so. This is a scary area.
Yeah, and that bit is the most complicated part of PowerApps, really, much like it was in InfoPath, right? Yeah. Doing all those formulas was the most complicated piece, but once you know how they work, it is fairly intuitive. And like I said last time, if you are familiar with Power Query and doing big complicated functions in Excel, you will be right at home with the syntax and how you write it out and all of that.
I think another one as well, Rod. So considering myself as a citizen developer, what we do a lot is copy and paste, okay? And because there's a lot of these cool things that I used to do in InfoPath that I can't tell you that I exactly understood what I was doing, but I got it right. And what I think happened, because InfoPath was so old already, is that there was like an invaluable amount of content out there. You could search for how do I get this right, and you would find somewhere that's shared the little function or something to get that right. And I mean, PowerApps is also going to get to that point where there'll be a lot of it out there that people are sharing to help people get that little function right, or the string or whatever you want to call that.
Absolutely. And like there is a lot of that already out there, right? It is very popular. That's one of the great things about the Microsoft suite of products.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we're doing this now, right?
Exactly.
You don't get the same sort of commitment if you're doing whatever else to the SAP. Yeah, certainly SAP.
But
so
on that note,
available.
Sorry, Rod, to interrupt you. But on that note, last time, I mean, we had a lot of fun last time, but I really want us to remember the last couple of minutes of our session today. I've got some slides in the presentation, but I want us to just talk a little bit about the community and who they can follow and where they can get help and where there's training material and stuff, and for people to also help themselves. So I've got some slides in there, and if you've got some resources or websites that a person can go to, then we can just share that in this as well. On my other webinars, I always have a last section where I kind of like how to stay up to date, how to keep on learning, how to join the community and those type of things. So if we can just remember to get back to that, that'll be pretty cool.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's brilliant, because that is what it's all about, right? We're all in this together and we can all help each other out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So going back to our tree view and where we had our tree view on the left-hand side there. Underneath that is insert.
So you must just up front every time tell me if I shouldn't just click the button, okay? So if you want to point to a button, just first say, Trace, don't click on it, but there's a button, okay? Because I'm going to just click on every button.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding it.
Please do. Please do.
I'm going to, you know me.
I do. So yeah, that will give us a list of different things we can add into our app. They are also on the insert tab at the top, right? We've got our file menu. If we click on insert there, most of them will be there.
Okay.
It does also have some things that the insert bit on the left, like what is a tab and what do you call this thing if it's not a tab? Like the nomenclature always makes things difficult. But that has all bits and pieces to do it. And it has a nice search function
as well, which is nice. These little groupings is quite nice as well for people getting to know the type of like things that you can insert, the controls and how they are grouped.
Yeah, It does make it nice and easy, which is sweet. And you can search through there. Even like it's nice if like, oh, how do I do this now? And you can just like sort of go to the input one and scroll down and be like, oh, okay, that's what I can use for this.
Yeah, but that was quite easy. I mean, if I had to start looking for a table now, I'm not sure what I'm looking for. It definitely is quite intuitive, just very quickly and be able to search for something.
Yep. So then below insert is data. So that is going to give us the opportunity to see all the different data sources we have connected to our app and allow us to add new ones in, which we'll talk about when we start building from scratch. We'll talk about how to add new data in and
I'm quite
change
about
those
that.
things.
Yeah. That's exciting.
But there we've got our SharePoint list, which is cool.
I think at that point, I'm going to let you share your screen that day.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
And this one's over to Rod, okay? And he's going to share his screen. Otherwise, we're going to take forever.
For sure. Below that is media. So that's for whatever media you want to add in. We've got our image in there that we've added. You can add images and videos and audio and all of that. Just be aware, like it doesn't want anything larger than 64 megs. I think you've got about 200 megs per app. And you don't want lots, right? The more stuff you put in, the more has to be loaded every time they load the app. So you do want to sort of keep that as minimal as you can.
And minimized and everything. So just on that compression point, I think something that's worth discussing is, so images that you insert, videos that you use, I didn't even know that you could add videos, to be honest, but is there any tools that you use, Rod, if you want to compress things? Is there a compression that happens in the form as well, that it compresses images or not?
Not particularly, no. You do want to save them sort of optimized. I know there are some websites and things. I do have,
I'll quickly,
I've got Adobe, so I generally use that. But there are a number of open source even alternatives.
Yeah. So just a quick note on that, I think for like the citizen developers out there like me is an easy way for me to do it, because the old, what was it called? Microsoft Office Picture Manager or something. Remember on the old version of Office, there used to be this little thing that they removed. But if you insert an image into PowerPoint, a very large photo or an image or something, you can actually in PowerPoint select the image. And if you go to picture format at the top, you'll see that there's a compress images button. So if you press on compress images, now this is already because it was a screenshot, okay? But depending on what type of image it is, you can then compress it further for web or email. And believe me, going much lower, like web and email, is still a good enough image to use because of the size that it displays on the form or something. So this is a very, very easy way to compress images straight in PowerPoint if you don't have a fancy tool for it. And then once it's compressed, just right click on the image and save it back again. But remember to save it as with a different name. So I normally just add small next to it or compressed so that you still have your large image, you know, that you can use in future for something else. So that's just a quick one of my little PowerPoint tips. Rod, I hope you don't mind.
That is a great tip. That is very useful. Thank you. I'll like when I'm stuck on a strange computer, I'll be able to do that now. Previously, I had to go
me, I don't
Google
use
for websites.
All those fancy things. I just use PowerPoint.
Yeah, but you do amazing work with it. Yeah. So especially if people are looking at these things on their phones. Like even modern phones, the resolution is not so good that you need a giant high-res file, right?
Yeah,
so just do bear those in mind. And then the last bit is the advanced tools.
Just a wait before you move off. Something I noticed there at the bottom. So this is where it does tell me that no larger than 64, but it does look like you've got a maximum total on a form as well, which looks like 200 megs. So is that a total gallery usage or something that you have? Is that?
I think yes. I think that's for the for the app itself, right? It's per app.
Got it. Okay.
And one nice little tip is at the top there, if you hit the little 3-dot menu, there is a button there to remove unused media.
Got it.
Which is really handy. Often these sorts of apps, one of the great things about PowerApps and the whole Power Platform really is it really lends itself towards agile development, right? Which sounds really fancy and like you're going to Scrum and whatever. But really all it means is you can get something up and running very quickly and then work on it over time. And you can do
that's
that
rapid prototyping, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So in the course of doing that, you'll often have orphaned files, orphaned controls, weird connections and stuff. And at some point in the lifespan of your app, you'll probably want to start a new one. But using something like that, remove unused media, you can pretty quickly.
So I didn't know about that. Because just a couple of forms that I've built, I end up with 5 or 6 different iterations of an image that I want to use, because I'll add it and then I go, no, I don't want it to look like that. Then I add a new one and I don't want it to look like that. So this is a good tip then to go and remove the ones that you didn't decide on using.
Yeah, just a handy little thing.
Cool.
Then advanced tools. We'll probably talk about this in future ones more. We're not actually going to get into it now, but there's just to let you know what's happening here. The first one is the monitor, which is really handy. It'll open a run of the app, like you're actually running the app, and you can click through it and all of that, and you can see in the background what's actually happening. Which is really handy when you've got multiple different data sources, right? When you start getting errors and you're trying to track down what's actually causing that error, because when I click this button, it's actually doing 10 different things, what's actually breaking. You can watch it go through everything and troubleshoot it that way. Another cool thing is you can invite a user into that monitored session. So if you're troubleshooting for a
inviting
user,
you into some of my sessions for sure. You know that's going to happen now, right? I'm going to be inviting you into one of these sessions, like at some point.
Sure. So like we'd want to do that the other way around probably. So the way you do that is somebody comes to you and says, oh, the app broke. They're like, oh, well, what did you do? And they're like, I don't know. So like, how do you troubleshoot that, right? It's next to impossible. So what this lets you do is you can open the monitor and say, okay, here, click this link. And it opens the app for them and it looks just like the app to them. Like, try it again. And you can watch them click through and see what actually breaks, which is invaluable.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And the other one there is tests. It's currently experimental, but this is based off of what do Microsoft call it? They've got like a robotic process automation for like really old apps running DOS or whatever, where you can't actually connect to it via API. You can open a thing and you can actually click through on the screen and then run that again and again and again. And this works in a very similar way. So if you have an app that you're going to be changing data in and making adjustments to, you can create test cases for that app where you actually open the app and record your process of going through and doing everything, creating new items, editing items, deleting items, all of that. And then you can replay that test. So when you go and add a new piece of functionality into the app, you can run the test to check that nothing that you had previously done breaks.
Cool. Sounds complicated. I can't wait to try it.
Yeah. Only really useful if you're building big, complicated apps. But if you are building big, complicated apps, it's hugely useful. It cuts down on all the testing time.
That's cool.
Sweet. So if we can close out of that, having the names of that popped out by just hitting the hamburger menu above the tree view there again, and then that'll shrink it down to the side.
Oh.
Cool. Very quickly before we get into more of our customizations, let's go through the menu. We've seen the file menu where we can save and publish, and we can change the icon. Actually, don't know if we talked about that. So if you go to the settings on there, Here's where we can change the name of our app. We can change our icon color and pick what icon we want and give it a description there.
Okay. And this is the icon that it uses on the mobile app, right? Well, technically,
yes.
well, yeah.
So in the PowerApps launcher, or if you add it to Teams, right, it's going to use that icon.
Okay.
Underneath that is screen size and orientation. So you can swap it, landscape, portraits.
If you swapped it to landscape, yeah.
It's gonna do funky stuff to your controls.
Yeah,
that's no, it doesn't mean desktop, right? But it does mean it'll be in a landscape orientation. So you can load a landscape view on your phone. It's just going to open so that you'll have to hold your phone sideways.
Got it. Okay.
But if you do click that quickly, you can also then see you can set up a bunch of different sizes. Does it not? Okay. Well, we'll have a look at that when we get into, because we created it like this. But
and also because we created it from SharePoint. Yeah.
Yes. You can typically also there, if you're doing it from scratch, you can pick a bunch of different aspect ratios and you can select your own. And you can lock the aspect ratio and the orientation, and you can scale it to fit available space or not. Under the advanced settings, there's a bunch of preview features you can turn on or off, and a bunch of experimental features you can turn on and off. I don't think we need to go into that at all. But just if you want to poke around with those things and see what's available, that's where you can get all of that.
Okay. So that's under settings, got it?
Yeah. That's where we can, here we can also save. We can also save this as something else. So just like you can save a document as something else, and you can have 2 copies of it, you can do the same thing here. So if you're going into a version 2, if you want a separate one as version 1 for whatever reason, you can do it like that. That is also a way you can create sort of templates for people.
So just while I'm here, and again, I'm jumping the gun, but let's say, because what I do a lot, Rod, is that I do creative solution building and drinking together. Okay, so sometimes late at night, I'll sit here and I want to try something cool new, and I'll pour a glass of red wine and I'll go and try something. And then sometimes I'll wake up that next day thinking, I wish I didn't do that. You know, I wish I didn't get that creative with that form, because now it doesn't want to load anymore. I've done something stupid and I don't know what it is I've done, right? So we know that these forms are building, these apps are building versions, right?
They are.
Yeah,
let's actually get into that quickly. So if you go back to your normal PowerApps tab, not in the Canvas editor, not in the App Studio like we've got here, if you go back to where you open the app from, it's just the other tab in your browser there. Yeah, you click OK. If you hit the 3 little dots next to there, and we go to details, and you hit details, this will give you a bunch of information about your app, and one of them is versions.
That helps.
And that works pretty much exactly the same as it would for SharePoint. And you can publish one of the older versions up, and it will become then the latest version.
Oh, that's awesome, because I think that's a big win. I think I've many a times broken something and then I honestly just don't know how to fix it again. I'll delete a control accidentally and I really don't know how to build it from scratch again. And I just want to, you know, have a quick way of getting back my old form, or my old app. So that's pretty nifty. Like it.
It will also show you, if you go back there very quickly, one of those, it'll show you there's a published tab there, and that will show you which one is live. It might not be your current version, right? Because
we're busy.
Remember, it doesn't become your current version until you publish. You can save it as many times as you want, and as long as you go in through there, you can test and change and whatever. Everybody else will still be using the live version until you publish your version, and then that becomes.
So technically, just to confirm this, because this is actually, and I mean, it's amazing. I'm looking at the time now. It's 35 minutes past already. Okay, I mean, that's just crazy. But you know how important this is, Rod? Because you know how many technical things don't cover the basics. because we kind of assume that people know everything. So just taking a slower session like this and really covering the basics, I think is extremely important for everyone. So excuse me for all my crazy questions, but if I look at the tab and I'm making changes here, okay? If I save, does it build a version on each save, or does it build the version on the publish?
No, I believe it builds a version on the save. What the publish will do, yeah, let's test it. But the publish will make it live, right?
Yeah, I'm going to save it, but I'm not going to publish it. Okay, so I'm going to just go straight to see all versions here because it'll be a refreshed list. So it doesn't, it keeps it. So that's fine. So it keeps on saving over that existing version until it's published, then it builds the new one.
But what it might do is each session gets a new version, right? So you can save, close it, open it again, and then that's a different session.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, so that's probably how that works there. Okay. And yeah, I know this is sort of slow, and we're not getting into a lot of buildy stuff. I do think knowing the interface and what it's doing and stuff, I think that's very important.
No, I absolutely agree with you. If I spend the whole hour just going through the menus and understanding what they're on, what they do, that's going to be very valuable for me, and I know it's going to be valuable for other people. So I definitely, I think that's a cool idea. Definitely. I just want to see. I've got so many pages up. Okay.
Cool. Let's very quickly run through the different tabs we have at the top. So our home tab has a couple really important things. One of them is the new screen, right, button, which is going to give us a number of different options. So first of all is a blank one. That's typically the ones you're going to use, right? Or the blank one and the scrollable one.
Okay.
That's typically all you'll use. The other ones do have like they're sort of templatized, right? So they'll have a bunch of controls in the page for you, and you can use them. They're all largely built off of blank or scrollable. So
here's a silly question: what on earth is the difference between a blank one and a scrollable? Because I would have liked the blank one to be scrollable anyway.
Yeah. So a blank one is not, right? Much the same as the screen you've got there at the moment. That's not scrollable. You get one screen, and that screen is what you have to play with.
Okay.
You can put a gallery on that with 1,000 items, and the gallery will scroll.
Okay.
But you can't then put another gallery below that. Right? Okay. You are put in just that screen there. So a scrollable screen will let you add, they call them cards. And basically it's just another section, another screen that you can then put more controls in. And then, so they call them canvases. And you can add additional canvases. So if you have a big form that's really complicated and there's lots of different controls in it, and you want people to scroll down it, you can do it like that.
Okay.
I would be a little wary about using that, right? There are definitely applications where you want to use it, but it is not a great user experience. If you want your user to scroll and scroll and scroll, especially in the case of like an edit form, if you've got 80 different attributes, you don't really want them scrolling all the way to the bottom to change the one they want to do. So
people kind of miss things when they have to scroll. It's interesting.
Yeah. So there are some ways we can build our pages to make that unnecessary. But there are definitely occasions where you absolutely need to use that.
Cool.
So those are generally the two kinds of them. Next to that, we have the theme drop down.
Oh, that's right. I remember that from last time.
Yeah, I remember that from last time. Currently, there is no way to change that. Like, you can't add your own ones.
Customize that, because that would be pretty cool. Hey, if you can bring in a company custom theme.
Can't wait until it's possible, and it's absolutely coming, right? It's up on user voice.
Well done.
So if people listening to this do not know, user voice is a really great thing in Office 365. You can Bing for it, right? It is a website. It's basically a forum. Is it on the side there?
Yeah, so all the apps these days, they're building in the user voice, which is pretty cool. So even Teams and those things, it makes it much easier for the users to navigate. So there would be, I'm going to just quickly open them. So while we're on it, I'm going to just open them separate and we can see if one of them is the user voice. So this is support. So top issues, learning, submitting ideas. This is what you were talking about?
Yes, there's submitting ideas there. So essentially, if you have something you want PowerApps to do that it can't do, you can go there and you can submit your own one, and you can find if somebody else has already submitted it and you can vote for it.
That's important. People don't always think about the voting. They just go and log a new one, which means it gets no traction. So please search for any features that you want to log. Go and always search first and see if there's something similar and go and upvote it. And then another tip and trick, peeps, is that when you log a new request, it gives you a URL to that ticket, okay? Go share the hell out of it, okay? Go on social media, go share it and say, peeps, I think this is really important. If you like the idea of this, please vote for it. I mean, that is crowdsourcing 101. And then in your company as well, share it on a message in Teams or email or something and say, please, people, please vote for this. Because the more votes they get, the more it moves up on the, line, the food chain of having an ability of being developed.
And the Power Platform team specifically are very strong around responding to user voice.
Oh, that's cool.
And adding that in, they pay very close attention. So that's really quite important.
Okay, I'm going to just quickly scroll through the other ones and close them again. So there's the PowerApps community. That's pretty nifty. We have some PowerApp learning type of stuff here. So that's those. Then, this goes to Flow. That's interesting.
Automate. Power Automate, in which we make flows.
Correct. Why would it go to Power Automate? Let me just see what made it go there. One of these buttons, or was it me? Maybe I opened that, and it was an old button that was open. Yeah, it was me. So let me close these, but then you all know that within the apps, please remember that normally the little question mark at the top opens up. Sometimes it's in the bottom corner, so just check out for that, but that'll take you straight to those. So thanks for reminding us of user voice.
Yeah. And go find the one for the theming and go upvote it, because I wanted yesterday.
Okay, I agree.
The home tab will then also have our WYSIWYG editor stuff. So if we have a piece of text selected, it'll show us instead of having to go through the attribute list, it will have the font and typeface and size and
so
color.
Like PowerPoint and Excel does it as well. The ribbons kind of like lifts up whatever you've selected, will bring up the relevant items.
So it has those there. Just also remember there are more attributes than are just focused there, right? So for all of these, there is stuff like hover color. So what color is it when you're hovering over it? What's the border color? What's the border thickness? The border if you're hovering over it, all of that. And a lot of that you can get on the right-hand side too. I typically find it much easier to do either in the home menu or just with the attribute list.
Okay.
They will then also let you reorder and align things much like we did in the tree view.
Okay.
Next there we have the insert tab. Again, it's got the new screen, the same thing.
I think wait, I first check that I missed something. Oh no, this was just the got it. Okay.
Yeah. So there are a number of different things here. You don't have to add them into the page now, but it's much like the insert tab that we saw there. So you've got all of your different inputs. You've got labels, which is just text, although you can use them as buttons. You have actual buttons. You have various different ways of capturing and displaying text. You have a number of inputs there. Then you have a number of galleries and different galleries. And I think when we get into building our app from scratch, we'll talk about the different galleries and what that does. There's a data table as well, which I find less useful. We have different forms that we can use to submit information to data sources. Then we've got media, which is not just our images. camera. The other really big one, like you see, there's one for video and one for stream. If you do want to put video in your app, use stream instead of video, right? Don't upload the video into your media library. That's not...
Draw a point to it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are some charts built in that you can use that can leverage off the data in your app. I would typically say if you do have a reporting requirement for your app, I'd first check why are you using PowerApps for this? Why is it not a Power BI report? And if you do have a real requirement for it, you can also use a Power BI tile. So if you are licensed for Power BI, that's the way to do it. If not, you do have a column, a line, and a pie chart. We've got some useful icons. These are great. Some of them are more useful than others, but a lot of them are very useful. The plus icon, the cancel icon, the check mark, the filter, right? There's various menu looking ones. You got the waffle menu, you got the more menu, you got a settings menu, hamburger menu, home button. Use those, right? You can come up with your own images and stuff for a design best practice. Use these because people know what these mean, right? You don't want to come up with your own little Svengali Picasso home button. Use a picture of a house. People know if they click the picture on the house, it takes them to the home screen.
Would it be nice if this was searchable though? If you could start typing and it finds an icon. That's something for you for sure.
Yeah. If you, no, it doesn't do it, does it? No. I'll say on the insert tab, it doesn't do it either, but it doesn't. Next to there, you have components. So when we talk about components, we'll do that. So we're not going to get into that now. Our next tab is the View tab. That's going to very much like the left-hand side there, right? We can have a look at our data sources. We can have a look at what media we have. It will also show us our collections and our variables. You can just push it back.
On buttons, man.
Don't click on the buttons yet. But you like when we get into the collections and variables and what those means and how we can use them, that's where you're going to do it. And then the last one there is our action tab. Typically, the only way I really use this, right? So you can use this to get to stuff like the on visible property of a screen, right? Or the on select of a button or a group. You can use it to get to those attributes. I would just use that. I would just do that in the property selector, the attribute selector.
Yeah.
The big one here is the Power Automate button. So if you have a button or a something, if you select the button and you click Power Automate, you can either then pick a flow you already have and attach it to that to run, or you can go create a flow that can run from PowerApps. And as we move through these weeks, we'll get into that too. I know we're running out of time here.
Let's quickly talk about the squigglies here at the top, can we?
Yeah, squigglies at the top. On the left of all the squigglies is the name of your app. Our next squiggly there is the app checker. That is a really useful thing. You can click that. And what that will bring up is if you have any errors in your app, so you're referencing a control that doesn't exist anymore, or you have you're running a flow that that is breaking, or you've done something to make performance bad, it's going to tell you here. So it can really help you refine your formulas and your app to run better. So if there are errors, there will be a red dot on there, and you can check it there, and that's really quite helpful. And it's a stethoscope for the app checker.
That's cute.
Then we have an undo and redo buttons. You can also Control Z if you mess something up, which is handy. Sometimes it doesn't work super lacquer, but it can. Last time we used the app preview, so the little play button.
The play button. So that's
we'll do that.
Play.
Yeah. another way you can do that is if you're in the app, you can also, if you hold down the Alt key, you can then click around the canvas and do things as if the app was running.
Ah. Okay.
So if you want to do that, and then just to the right of that is a share button, so you can share the app out to other users.
Let's just quickly talk about the share button again, please, and the permissions, right, because that's quite important for me. So I know that I've built this app from a SharePoint list, and I know who the members are on that site, so I know that they already have access to the data in that list, but does that give them automatically access to the app, or do I again have to share the app now as well?
No, you will have to share it to them, right? So having access to the data does not necessarily give you access to the app itself.
Got it.
Right?
Can you share with security groups, so Office 365 groups? Can you share it with specific groups?
Yes, you can. You absolutely can.
And what if I build an app that I want the whole company to access? Is there an easy way? Is there, like in the old days we had all domain users or something?
There is everyone.
Everyone, I like it. Oh, there we go, everyone. See, that works for me. Everyone works for me.
Another thing to think about here, right?
Oh my word, where am I going?
Often if you have other connections in here, I don't think it does it with SharePoint. SharePoint, I think you have to share with people specifically. But if you have a connection to a SQL database, for instance, right? That's done through a specific connection. And if you share the app to somebody using that connection, what it'll do in the background is it will share that connection with them as well.
Okay.
So that they can do that. When that happens, it will pop up a thing at the top of the sharing pane for you. It will pop up a little warning symbol saying, sharing this app is going to share at least one connection. Are you sure you want to do that?
I've got it. It's the same as like Power Automate. It's also something good to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So just if you are using sensitive data, just be aware of what connections you're using and that you are sharing that connection to people. The majority of people can't do anything with that, right? But if they have a little bit of savvy, they could then use that connection for something else and take more advantage of it than your app does, for instance.
So, right, we've got about 7 minutes left. Crazy. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that like we just clicked on the file menu and that's 53 minutes later? But do you think do you want to cover more here, or should we kind of wrap up just with some of the resources and things that we think people can use?
I think we can wrap up. I think we've taken a nice tour of the App Studio and all the different bits and pieces. So moving forward, we know where things are, and when I talk about the attributes bar and the function bar, the preview, we all know where all that stuff is, and we can move forward from there next time.
Absolutely agree. So I've just got a list here, and of course, Rod and myself, our Twitter handles are up there as well, but these are just some of the Microsoft Twitter handles that I kind of follow. So there's just a good screenshot you can take if you're not on Twitter yet. Then I haven't updated the slide, but I do have you there as well. So there's just a couple, and if you have any more to share, please let me know and I'll add them, right? But these are just some of the Power App like gurus that I've come across, and of course you're there, that I've come across to kind of like learn from. And I mean, especially Shane Young, I mean, his stuff's just brilliant. Okay.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Dave is actually from Johannesburg. He runs the PowerApps user group, and he's also really picked up and put a lot of content out there. So if you have any extras to add, but this is on YouTube, so there's a couple of channels that's worthwhile looking at as well. Of course, me and Rod, we are the most important ones, but you definitely can have a look there. And then don't forget Facebook though. Hey, we all have our different preferences, but on Facebook, I just quickly had a look, and of course, there's community groups. And there's like groups that you can join as well. So there's just some of those that I kind of came across that could be worthwhile taking a look at. So definitely I get a lot of, and I know that you do as well, Rod, but I get a lot of response on posting something when I have an issue or asking questions. There's always people that are prepared to answer questions. So the community is really amazing with us. So it's definitely a good thing to take a look at that. Have you got any other resources that you'd like to share, or something else you want to point me at that might be a good resource for people?
I think you pretty much covered it there. I'll go through all my links and stuff and see if I have some little hidden gems, but those are the major ones. And like really, if you sort of pay attention to Twitter to see what's coming up new, and if you're looking for specific tutorials, just how do I do stuff in general, Shane Young is a great resource. Like he has really fantastic stuff up there.
The roadmap is also a very good resource for me. So to kind of go there, and you can go and search for PowerApp, and what it's going to do, the roadmap, it's going to show you what are they busy developing, what have they just rolled out, and what's already been launched. Okay, and it normally gives you detail as well. So a lot of them has a blog as well that you can read up about. So if I had to go to automatic sensitivity, so this one doesn't have a blog. I bet you I'm not going to find a blog now. That's typical. There we go. So this one, for example, will have a link that says there's a little blog article that can tell you more. So this is definitely something that I point customers to as well. So just go and check out so that you're aware of new things that are coming. You might be frustrated with something and they're actually busy launching it. So a very cool resource for me also to use is the Microsoft 365 roadmap. So it's a pretty cool, and most of the products are in there. So you can definitely take a look at that as well.
Absolutely. And where we were before, right? When we hit the little help menu there, if you go to the documentation there is quite a lot of good stuff there. The community tab there is really helpful. That PowerApps community there, and the learning catalog has some good learning path stuff there for you too.
That's very cool. So I cannot believe that hour went by so fast, Rod. But we are at. But that was very good for me. I'm glad. I kind of just took a slower pace at this, and you definitely helped me with that because I'm like a little bit over fast. Okay. And so I'm glad we just took a step back and we took a slow scroll through there. We did kind of plan to make some changes and do crazy things as well, but I think that was very valuable to just take a very slow scroll through that. I'm so happy because I actually helped customers on PowerApps today, and they are so excited to get started. So I can't wait to share this with them as well, so that they, in their own time, can just kind of get used to the UI and what it is that the things do. So anyway,
I mean, there is so much to do and so much for us to see. Having that firm grounding of what we're looking at, I think, is important. And we're going to get to each and every control, how to use galleries, how to change everything. There is lots to explore in the weeks ahead, which I'm excited about.
I'm also very excited about it. Do you like our gift today?
It was super cool. Super cool.
PowerPoint for the win, people. PowerPoint for the win. Well, from my side, Rod, it's an absolute pleasure to do this with you. I'm learning loads, which I really enjoy, and it's nice that we can actually do this and share it with other people. So I think that's incredible. Go follow Rod on YouTube as well. My stuff's also reloaded, so by tomorrow we'll start loading the recording again. And follow us on social media. So reach out, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. So that's it from me, Rod.
Thanks, Trace. And thanks everybody watching.